meeting, 18th of August. Please stand with me and I'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First off, we need to approve the minutes from August 3rd, accounts payable vouchers and payroll dockets.
And we approve the minutes from the August 3rd meeting and the accounts payable vouchers and the payroll docket as presented.
I second that motion.
No more questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Up first, Jason.
Yes.
That's why you got for the front row.
That's right. Ready to go.
You're in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Glad to have you here, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate being here. So I'm Jason Cranny. Tonight I represent the JRAC committee and David Sutter as president, as his representative. So I wanted to pass this out to you guys real fast. Just I know that Ron has a copy of it, but I thought that you guys might like to see it also. And I'll just give you just a slight background on the process of hiring the community coordinator and what we've gone through right now. Around 3 months ago, we posted online for a representative for the community director, the coordinator position. We got a few applicants, and after discussing with David, we decided that we would repost it and cast a wider net. We posted it on some additional websites, and we got about altogether about 50 applicants. So of those 50 applicants, we narrowed it down to about 5 of them. We did a short phone interview from Court Services, and 2 of them essentially self-eliminated because it was a contract position, because they were looking for something with benefits. So of the 3 that remained, David and I did a interview with them, and even though they were all very qualified and capable of doing the position, we believe that Michael Hicks stood out far and away above the rest of the pack. He came in highly prepared. He had taken his own initiative, had done his own research on the position, on the committee, on our goals and visions for it, had contacted members of the committee beforehand, had gotten their feedback for what the position would entail, came prepared with specific items of his resume and pertinent information for us. It was extremely, it was one of the best interviews that I have been a part of. Both David and I made a recommendation to the JRAC committee last week that we recommend to the commissioners that we hire Michael Hicks. We had a few questions and everything, but there was no objections to it, and that brings us here today. So on behalf of the JRAC committee, I would like to make a formal recommendation that we hire Michael Hicks as the community coordinator, and I am happy to be able to answer any questions that you guys have at this time.
Start date, how quick can you be with us?
He can be with us, so we had made some discussions and everything like that, and actually I believe he would be able to start next Monday on the 22nd. So, yeah.
Service out there.
Everybody here.
So, how long was he at the, okay, 18 months at the day treatment?
I cheated, I already looked
This
Yeah.
this comes at recommendation from the committee, right? Or-
Yes, exactly, yes.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we employ Michael Hicks as education director.
at.
Community.
You're good. Our treatment process.
I second that.
Any more questions or discussions? All those in favor say aye. All right, motion carries.
Perfect, thank you all. I
I'll be
really-
here at the next meeting,
Yes, and
September 1st, maybe.
September 1st.
See
And
that.
I wanted to be sure, I am going to be taking a probation test in Indy that day. It's in the afternoon, 1 to 3. I'm hoping to be able to make it back for that meeting. If it's just going to be an impossibility, I'll get with you so
Okay.
that we can discuss it, because I definitely want to be there and I want
Oh,
to
yeah.
be there with them. So.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yep,
Thanks for
thank you.
Get
going
him,
through the
get him kicked off.
Yeah.
50 applicants.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. I'm really glad that we had such a great response, and that I really believe we have somebody, I mean, with the right background and leadership skills to be able to get us going and everybody on the right direction, so, yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate, I haven't had an opportunity to talk with, Ron has been heavily involved in this process, but I would love to be able to talk with you guys sometime too, so, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jackson.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you. And Ron Heller?
Good evening.
Howdy, sir.
Here, yeah, my name is Ron Heller. Thank you for having me here this evening. Beautiful country, by the way. Just lovely hills. And beautiful. Excuse me, a little bit of a rasp here. I'm going to spend the next few minutes kind of boring you with this GASB 34 thing. How it came about, what the State Board of Accounts requires, how we get there, and what the finished product looks like. I don't want to take up much of your time, so let's we can start going through this. Please feel free to stop me at any point with questions. GASB 34, Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement 34 is what it's formerly known as. It was released in the late 1990s. And urban legend has it that many a finance director left the field in the wake of that. It just looks so horrendous. And it was a major thing in the government sector. What it was meant to do was to make government statements look a bit more like private sector financial statements. And so what they did was they focused in on capital assets, which local governments had not been accounting for prior to that. So this thing's been around 25 years. Capital assets defined. Next slide. This was supposed to be a PowerPoint, by the way. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. Capital assets. What are capital assets? The two classes of capital assets. General infrastructure assets, which are your roads, your bridges, your land, other things that you've discretely identified as part of just the basic infrastructure of the county. And then there's general non-infrastructure assets, which is everything else. Vehicles, machinery, equipment, buildings, structures, land. Okay. The way we inventory the assets, in general infrastructure assets on page 3, relies heavily on county-provided data. You will undoubtedly have electronic data available about your county roads, in many cases bridges, those kinds of things. Ideally, it's available in electronic format that hopefully can be downloaded to Excel. Saves me a lot of time. And where we need to, we can supplement that data by either tapping into INDOC, which I think has a lot of bridge data, as I recall, particularly good stuff, or your engineering consultants database. We can go there as well. So we get as much information as we reasonably can. General fixed assets, on the other hand, relies heavily on the information provided by your insurer, either your agent or your broker. You undoubtedly have insurance, either self-insurance or through an agent or broker. Typically, they'll have schedules that will give the replacement cost value of your insured assets. That's the starting point for general fixed assets. And what we do is then we try to get to its historical cost. This data may or may not be in electronic format because it's not that extensive. I mean, as compared to roads, for instance, all your road segments together, probably 800 or 900 of those. But with machinery and buildings and that sort of thing, that's a fairly finite number, so it doesn't have to be in electronic format. And then where we need to, we check the data that we receive from the insurer with the relevant department heads to make sure that, everything lines up. And should we find discrepancy, we'll bring it to your attention so that you're not paying insurance for something that you may not have. How do we value infrastructure assets? First of all, historical costs are generally not available. Main Street here in Madison, for instance, who knows when that was built? So what we do is we'll pick a date at your option to date these assets from. Typically, what we do is we go back to 1979 because that's what GASB 34 allows you to do. So we would, for instance, Main Street would be deemed to have been constructed in 1979, and we would then move forward with the historical and net book value calculations from there. You see here, as I just said, the year placed in service. Historical roadway costs are estimated based on the materials. Is it gravel? Is it pavement? Is it concrete? If that's available, if you break your roadways down that way. The type of roadway, is it an arterial or a secondary or a local road? The dimensions, how long is it? How wide is it? We also, as an aside, this really, I guess I just left it out. We add an assumed right of way because we're valuing the land that those roads sit on as well. So we add a right of way, generally 10 feet on each side, but whatever your standards are, that's what we would do. Year placed in service, as I mentioned, 1979 or since, and we deflate that replacement cost with a consumer price index deflator. Okay. Also valuing infrastructure assets, we estimate the current replacement cost based on the criteria that I just mentioned. We deflate that replacement cost, again, using the CPI to deflate it back to 1979 or whatever. And by the way, if we know the date an asset was placed in service, we'll use that. But where we don't know, we'll use a default date. In the case, let me just digress for a second. In the case of long-lived assets like roadways and bridges and that sort of thing, we can use 1979. That doesn't work so well for vehicles or machinery or equipment. We need to pick an alternate date for that, an alternate year in service for that, because you're talking about 43 years for a particular machine that may be dead or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm ad-libbing now, I'm not good at ad-libbing. Anyway, we depreciate the estimated historical cost in accordance with an assigned asset life, which I'll offer my suggestions and what's typically used, but you can adjust any way you want. So for instance, a building would have a 50-year useful life. That's the assumption in terms of depreciation. A roadway, typically depending upon the material, will have a 15-year life or a 25-year life. Again, depending upon the type of material and the type of roadway that it is, whether, again, it's a primary or a local, that sort of thing. And that gets us to net book value, which is what the State Board of Accounts is looking for, bottom line. And we'll get to that in a minute, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Non-roadway assets, on the other hand, as I mentioned a minute ago, roadways are typically the largest asset class that a county has. And you'll see that again, and that as well in a minute. Non-roadway assets consist of land, which, as I mentioned a minute ago, includes a right-of-way that we can make an assumption as to, or if you've got right-of-way data, we can use that. Bridges, if you have available data on that, and I assume you do. And anything else. For instance, if you have an inventory of your traffic lights, that would be included, but nobody's going to be expected to go out and count the number of traffic lights in the county. So it's that sort of thing. It's a question of how reasonably available is the data. If you're looking at a parcel of land and you don't know the dimensions, you just say we can't value it because we don't know the dimensions. Unless somebody wants to go out and actually pace off the dimensions, which seems a bit much. But you know, we'll see where we go with the kind of data that you have. Okay, next. Valuing non-infrastructure assets. Information is provided by the county's insurance agent or broker, as I mentioned before. It generally provides only replacement cost or insured value. Occasionally it has acquisition year, mostly with respect to vehicles and equipment. So for instance, they'll list a 2015 Ford 250 kind of thing. You know it was bought in you assume it was bought in 2015. There are certain assumptions that build into this all throughout it. So I mean, and that's allowable. You need to adapt a capital asset policy. In any case, you should have one of those. It identifies the assets to be capitalized rather than expensed. The capitalization threshold is usually set at $5,000 or $10,000, which means that anything that costs less than that threshold would not be capitalized, wouldn't build into your asset base. Depreciation schedules for each asset class will also be needed, and I have suggested schedules for that as well. Now we get to the Indiana State Board of Accounts, the SBOA. They're responsible for monitoring compliance with GASB 34 as part of its annual or semi-annual audit process. Let me just digress for a second. 20 years ago, I did about 30 of these valuations here in Indiana, just in the wake of GASB 34 being turned down. And I guess there was some dissatisfaction with the level of compliance. But since that time, the State Board of Accounts has mandated that you report your capital assets in a certain way, and we'll get to that in a second. They rely on good faith estimates. Nobody's going to hold your feet to the fire if, in your experience, a roadway costs $1 million a mile, and nobody's going to come back and say, no, it's $650,000 a mile. They're looking for good faith estimates, is what they are. It's middle-sized to small ballpark kind of numbers. And requires a note to the financial statements that shows historical cost of your assets, additions and deletions to accumulated depreciation, and resulting net book value at fiscal year end. Page 8 shows that note. That's the format that they recommend. You can see how the assets are divided into sliced a different way than we sliced them before, into infrastructure and non-infrastructure. Here they're sliced into capital assets not being depreciated, which is land and construction in progress. Say you're building a building, that's carried on your books as construction in progress. When the building is complete, you roll that construction cost into your asset base. So that's how that works. And then capital assets being depreciated. There's your roads, bridges. This, by the way, is Orange County's numbers. I don't think I'm betraying any confidence on that. Lonnie was pretty permissive with what I could do with the information, but this is Orange County numbers. And you can see how it breaks down into the balance at the end of the last fiscal year, additions, disposals, and then the balance at the end of the current fiscal year. It's pretty straightforward. It requires monstrous formulas in Excel, some of this stuff. I'm really very proud of some of those formulas. Okay, anybody have any questions so far? Any comments? Okay. Next page. The note elements, and as you look at the on page 8, if you look at that table, you'll see that the note elements are basically divided into two things. There's the assets being depreciated, and then there's accumulated depreciation. So you break those out separately. So what you're looking for is previous year's ending balance, as I mentioned, based either on actual or estimated cost. The two asset types, as I mentioned, are those being depreciated, those not being depreciated. You record your additions, which will always be based on actual cost because it's a recent expenditure. You record your deletions, any disposals that you've made of any assets. If you sell a 96 Ford or something, that comes off your asset list, as does the depreciation associated with it. So there are changes, both positive and negative, in net asset values or current year's ending balance. Now that's undepreciated. Then we get to the next page, which addresses depreciation. Same classification approach as before, talking about assets, and that's previous year's ending balance, additions, deletions, boom, you're at net book value. And it's based on the specified useful life of each asset class per the adopted capital asset policy. Do you have an asset policy? I sent you a couple of templates.
Yes, the attorney is working that up for us
Okay, good.
as we speak, so.
So in any case, you'll have that. Okay. The depreciation is based on the annual depreciation times the number of years in service, obviously. That brings us to project deliverables, which is the last slide. What you'll get is a draft final report, Excel-based, that I would ask you to review. Make sure that you agree with the underlying assumptions. Make sure that we get good faith historical cost estimates, that you're comfortable with the numbers. This is, after all, your document, not mine. So you've got to be comfortable with the underlying assumptions, and whatever changes we need to make in the draft, we'll make. The final report, after you've reviewed and commented on the draft, is again an Excel-based updatable valuation. Literally, by changing one cell, the entire workbook changes values to reflect the new year. So when you go from 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 2022, you change one cell, all the values change to reflect that additional year. Now that assumes that it's maintained, during the course of the year, and I would recommend that only one person, Heather, you would have access to it. You'd be the focal point on that. Well, you're one of the bright lights, big city and all that. And then there'll be a PDF of a final report summary, just the verbiage underlying the data. And then finally, was there a question? No. Finally, any changes, any adjustments, anything that needs to be changed is changed up through your first State Board of Accounts audit will be done at no additional cost. So you get that kind of a guarantee that the State Board of Accounts accepts it. And that's about it. I have gratuitously included kind of a brief bio on the back. So anyway, that is it. Gentlemen, questions, comments, epithets? Well, nothing? Okay. I hope you found that informative.
His agreement that I sent a copy of to you guys, I have had the attorney go ahead and look over that. He agrees with everything that, yeah. So.
It's pretty straightforward.
It is.
This is the work I'm gonna do, and if I don't do it, God knows. So,
Can I ask why we're doing this?
it's required, I'm sorry.
It's
go
a
ahead.
required State Board of Accounts auditable item for next year. So we should have always been maintaining this, but it's something that has fell through the cracks throughout the years, but it was not something that was always looked at by State Board of Accounts. They are going to an enhanced regulatory system where this is going to be an item that we can get written up on if we do not
So
comply.
you don't have this database in any way, shape, or form, and that's
It's-
why we need this?
It's in different places.
It's,
It's in different places, in different formats.
right. It's not put together like it should be at this point, and I think it's old information that I have right now.
Yeah, now, I should mention that you do have a listing at the back of your audit of your assets and, but basically just your assets. I don't think there's any depreciation.
No.
No additions, no deletions. So it's just a straight listing of the value of the assets.
Right, and right now, we do not have a policy, so we're just following the loose $5,000.
I would recommend 10.
Yeah, that's what,
It simplifies your bookkeeping
right.
enormously. Oh, and it, by the way, the threshold, whether it's $5,000 or $10,000, is per asset item. So if you buy, for instance, a police radio system with 15 units or something, if they're less than whatever the threshold is, if they cost less than what the threshold is, they don't go into the asset base. So you don't put the whole system in, you put individual assets in, just to clarify. That it? Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found it somewhat informative. Yeah, that's it.
We've been doing one for the roads for,
I'm sorry?
we've been doing the asset management plan for the roads for several years. I mean,
So you've got good data on it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
on,
real
yeah.
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 they've had a habit to apply for the community crossing grants. and
Right,
things like that.
okay.
And we've talked a little bit about, all right, we need something for other things.
So my value there is to put the value on it.
Right,
And
right.
to depreciate it appropriately. That's basically what I need to do in that case.
Okay.
Thank you.
We need to-
Thank you.
Good night, all. Have a pleasant evening.
Yes, you too.
Safe
Careful.
travels. Bring it
Thank
in the
you.
next meeting, a motion, and I'll get it. And then I'll, yeah,
Okay, Mark Sherman, are you ready, sir? It's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jack Lawson's here with me. And Jack's out there every day, and if you guys ever want to take a tour, you know, you can always call. Jack, I'm not going to put your cell phone out here because you don't want everybody in the whole world to know.
Okay, it's all good.
Yeah, but really, yeah, so Jack can tour you anytime. I wanted to take a moment and thank Sarah. Sarah's working with Paul in our office, and they talk a lot about money and pay requests, and we appreciate Sarah helping us out and Paul, and they're doing a great job. Take a moment and thank Bob Little. Bob Little's out there a lot, which is good because he has a good construction background. And Bob helps us think through things, and you know, having another brain pair of eyes helps us out very much. Anyway, I'm not asking for more money. How's that sound so far?
Yeah.
We have some allowance funds, and one of them is an allowance fund for utility work. And there's been some added costs in some big-time inflation, PVC pipe and some things, and we have an allowance fund in there for utilities, about $50,000. And so we're gonna need to use some of that money to pay some inflation for some PVC pipe. And we've shopped, it started out at about $68,000, we've shopped around and got it down to about 46, a little over 46,000. And all we're just kind of making a report that we're gonna use that fund. It's already in the contract, it's already in the budget. So we're not asking for more money, we're just kind of explaining that we need to do that so we can get this on order because we're ready to get going on it. So I guess it's more of a report, Bob, than I ask. Yeah, it's a fund. And you guys are getting observation reports from us, I think, and if you have any questions about that. Things are going well, I think, knock on wood. And thanks to Jack and Bob and everybody that's out there. I talked to Jack Krause on the phone a couple of days ago, and we talked about these allowances. He's good and thinks it's a good idea. So that's pretty much it for that, so unless you have any specific questions. So we don't need I don't think we need any action necessarily, we just want to bring you up to speed.
Sure.
Okay, that sounds okay. Bob's out.
Piping and stuff for the water, everybody knows.
It's gone crazy.
It's absolutely
Yeah,
ridiculous.
and we put some of these allowances in because we know these things can happen. That's to cover you, protect you. That sounds okay, that's pretty much it. That's, everything else okay. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, any questions?
Any concerns from your point of view on how things are going? or-
No, not really. I mean, we've, you know, like, we thought the switchgear was gonna be here like 16 years from next year, and it showed up, and so we got very happy about that. So, we got in here, I think we got in here and broke ground at a good time.
Okay.
We have colleagues, and engineers and architect friends who are on projects like this that aren't going well because they got started later and the supply stuff was worse. So we got out in front of this, I think, and got things on order. I think
A lot of the contractors have stuff brought in and it's sitting there on site ready to roll.
we've got a lot of
So
things piled up here and
we're
there.
not 12 weeks out on some of the stuff we need tomorrow, so that's.
We bought all the HVAC equipment early and stored it in warehouses in New Albany. We stored things all over the place, so.
Just the way things were going, you didn't know you could
You
try
didn't
to
know,
order
you
something.
didn't order it, buy it, store it, so far, but we got a long way to go, but it's going
We'll
well
get
so
there.
far. We'll get there. Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Both of you appreciate the work.
Thank you. Yes, we do. We appreciate the opportunities and the work very much.
Looking good out there.
Thank you. Okay.
Is there a Richard Carter in here?
We're hoping not, right?
No.
Well, I did review the meeting out at the fairgrounds.
Richard.
Yes, please, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm gonna call on you for assistance now that I'm set.
Well, that wasn't part of the deal.
On the meeting out at the fairgrounds that we had on the Second Amendment, sanctuary, I don't like the word sanctuary anymore than anybody else, it should be preservation. I think that's what the state of Missouri used. And I think that's what a couple of the Indiana counties have used, Preservation Act ordinance. The retired professor of political science should have known the Second Amendment is number 2 for a reason. It protects the First Amendment and all the rest of it. And it is there for one reason only. It is there, and the reason it's in the Constitution is it is there to protect us as individual, armed individuals against our tyrannical government people. Now, I'm going to toss this in because it's not in my notes. But in 1945-46, when people were returning from World War II, take some time out, don't look at the whole 1 hour of it, but look at one of the 50-minute things. The War of Athens, Tennessee. It's the McKin County War. And that was the very example, the best example you'll ever see of why we have the Second Amendment. That was in 1946. It was the first successful rebellion partly in the United States since the beginning.
was that for. The only problem is, it did good for them in the county, but the rest of the state was so corrupt it took years to fix. But anyway, that is one that you need to look at. And then, I wanted to get that in there, and the Second Amendment, it's from the Federalist 46, I'm sorry, I can't remember if that was Hamilton or who wrote it. But that's one of the items in the Federalist Papers that's pretty clean, cut and dry, that you can't misunderstand. Now, another thing, it's not in my notes, I'll toss in, a lot of these states are pushing for 21 firearms. I hope we don't get into that, because I'll tell you right now, if you look at your state constitution, it says your militia at 18 is supposed to be armed. The militia of the United States is supposed to be 18 and up to 45. So anybody that's saying you gotta move up, they're in trouble. Now, the other thing, it was mentioned that we needed amendments to save the other amendments, so that the cycle would not be privileged. Well, I hate to tell you, but your First Amendment has already been done away with. It was done away with, I think it was last year. And when you hold up Exhibit 1. Now, I'm going to look around the room a minute. I'm doing this for age group. Because in my notes, I said that 99% of you are on that terrorist list put out by the FBI this last couple months. Every one of you, except for the younger ones. And that's because they haven't been around long enough to know some of those. And it's not, that is in black and white because my color printer is down, but it's in color. And I know you are all three on it. Yes, you do. If you've seen the report, you're on it.
Yes, I did.
So you're a domestic violent person. And then I'm going to jump down a little bit. And the reason you're on that, and the reason it started out is, if you remember in the news, and I don't know, I don't watch any network news. If I want to know kind of what's going on, I watch Sky News Australia. And on the school board meetings, the Department of Justice was told to investigate anybody that went in and spoke up at the school board meeting that disagreed with their agendas. And that's when this all started, where you lost your First Amendment. Now there's another statement that came out, and that was mentioned there, and it was, the professor stated that, quote, "We cannot cry fire in a crowded community building or theater." How many of you heard that? How many of you used it? Well, Mr. Bush, before he was president, used to do that a lot of times. Because they use that term, the way I just read it, is to try to disprove or disadvantage those statements before, like to make my statement sound untrue. It's one of the reasons for they do it, or they want to change the subject. That's been a traditional use for it. Now, how many of you, well, I'm not going to ask that. I have had a lunch today. I'll skip it. I thought it was true. But that quote is not correct. Because they all leave out the key word. You cannot falsely cry fire in a community building or that. But they tend to leave out the word falsely. And it is there, falsely. That's the key word. But so the next time you hear them say that, ask them why they left out the word falsely. Now I'm gonna jump to the next one. Sandy Palmer made a statement that commissioners took an oath of office. And you're not gonna like what I've decided to do because of that. Because your oath of office, then she brought it up, I thought it ought to be put in the Second Amendment Preservation Act that any government employee that violates their oath of office is severely punished. And I know, I'll ask you to do kind of your own little bit. Go around and ask some of your employees that you know, have they read the Constitution? And you might ask them if they know what the Ninth Amendment means. Okay, the next one. So we need penalties in there for anybody that breaks the oath of office. She thought that was pretty important. Now, Daniel Hellman said he wanted the ordinance put on the ballot. Well, that's fine. If you want to put every other ballot, ordinance on the ballot, I'm all for it. But don't single out my request for an ordinance to be put on the ballot. They either all go on or not. And speaking of ballots and so forth, it's going to get a little hairy. I think this is number 2.
Well, because that's where you never.
The problem with the voting today is Democrat versus Republican versus this and that. I would venture to say that there is a very high percentage of people that go and vote, I'm Republican, I'm voting Republican. Not the person that's best qualified, but I'm voting Republican. The Democrats do the same thing. And that's not right. You should check out, because you're going to do that because you get all these ads. Every one of them is screwed up trying to convince you to vote for this person or that person. So do some research. It takes a little time, but it's important that we have elected officials that we know what they're going to do when they get in office. And that is handout. Which one was that?
2.
And then on handout 3 is the one, the sheriff of Missouri, who has a very good ordinance on the President's Second Amendment there. That just tells you what he thinks about the feds coming in and trying to violate the Second Amendment. He says it's not going to happen, and he means it. And by the way, the Missouri people that violate the Missouri law are fined $50,000. And that's, I think that's a little steep, but then again, maybe not. And then number 4 is 87,000 new IRS agents. Now, if you want to apply, and you can, the qualification for the IRS major duties will be including you will be willing to carry a loaded firearm and be willing to use deadly force if necessary. That's against you people. Don't believe it, does it? And then that jumps to the next thing. How many of you know that every government department today, I can't think of it, I'll challenge you to find me one, that has not been equipped with full military automatic rifles, fully automatic pistol, and just recently, I forget what it, I think it was, the IRS. They already have 5 million rounds of ammo, but not like the new ones they just got. They got $700,000 worth of hollow points, which is illegal between the countries to use a hollow point in war. So why are our agents using hollow points if the military can't use them?
Is
And that's-
Australia telling you this? Is
What?
that where you get the news, Australia? Is that what you
I
said?
watch Tonight News Australia, yes.
No,
I get it on YouTube.
YouTube, okay.
Checking your sources.
They're pretty hilarious at times.
Okay.
So the IRS is gonna come after you. They said, oh, 400 million or above. No, they're after you. And your FBI is totally corrupt. I didn't bring those papers. But it's gone over the edge. Now, all the departments have it. Department of Education, well, the Department of Education is fully military rifles. Oh, by the way, there's a YouTube channel. It's called God, Family, and Guns. He'll give you an update on which department's getting all the ammo and how much it's costing and so forth. I don't know where he's getting his information, but on most of this stuff that I've got is from Freedom of Information Acts filed by Breitbart or Judicial Watch or somebody else that forces the government to turn over the information. Now we come to the rest of the, Bill 675. Do I have that? That would be number 5.
Listen, you'll have your turn to speak at the end. Please be quiet.
Senate Bill 675 is proposed by one of our favorite senators. I'll get him later. But it's on the next denial, and this is where you people are going to have to get involved as commissioners, because 675 says that the federal government on all the denials, next denials, that their local police and law enforcement should investigate. You'd have to hire half the people in this county to probably do that. The denials are bad. I have a report, but I had a printer problem, and I will send it to you. I have the statistics from 1998 to 2016. In 2016, they changed how they did the statistics on NICS under Obama. And some people say it was because he stopped his prosecutions that gun laws dropped, according to the press, which is, I don't really believe anymore, but dropped 40%. So I will send you the information on that. It's the same information that I sent to my U.S. senators, information in 2016. The next system where they check to see if you are eligible to buy a firearm. By the way, all the mass shootings got their guns through an FFL because the government blew it on the next system, basically. Every one of them. And the outfit that keeps those statistics is called the NCJRS. It's a department of the government. But in the past, I would be able to go in there within maybe an hour and a half, have all the statistics for all the states, the country, and everything else on how many they had, how many they prosecuted, and everything else. But since they changed it, I'm a hunting back on the computer. It would take me weeks to do it now. So. More here, I think. Most of that packet we've got is on the next systems and so forth. batches 6 and 7 are on the next system, where the FBI admits that it's wrong. As they said, 95%, but it's closer to 99.7% they are wrong on the next system. And that's 6 and 7. And number 8. So that. Yeah. On number 8 there, I mentioned the senator. Number 8 is a list of the senators that's been from Indiana that has consistently, throughout his career, been anti-firearms. I've got the documentation, I've got a file on him, and he is totally against anybody with firearms. In fact, he's the one that sponsored most of these firearms laws. And I am a Republican, have been for many years. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to vote for it. There's no way they could get me to vote for him.
Who is it that you're talking about?
Todd Young.
Oh.
But look at his record. His record is there to see. Look at his co-sponsors. His co-sponsors is Senator Schumer, or that gal from Maine, or Alaska, and so on. And I think that pretty well covers it. Oh, the GAO report was probably last, wasn't it?
Right, it is.
Yeah, there's a GAO report, Government Accounting Office. Surprising enough, when I did it, I think it was in 2018, when they audited the NIS, the NICS system. Their findings was that they was doing such a bad job of follow-up and prosecuting people that lied on the form. I don't know if you've ever bought a gun, but you fill out a form called 4473, the next form. It says on there, if you lie, you get 10 years and a hefty fine. There's no quibbling about it. It's on right on that form. Every one of our mass shooters in the last 5 years have filled out that form, relied on that form, and they never prosecute. And there's one case in Indiana that I don't know if you're aware of, a couple of years ago, maybe 3. Big gun dope ring up at one of the counties north of about Indianapolis. They raided it and so forth. They had guns and everything else. And I followed it for about 3 months. And I finally called the sheriff up there and says, what the heck is going on? They haven't charged him anything. You know what their answer was? It takes us 3 years to get a grand jury. That was the response, and I got that reply. So that pretty well covered everything I have, except have you got my ordinance ready yet?
Well, not exactly.
What do you mean, not exactly? You've had weeks now, since July 30th.
Yeah, yeah, takes time. A good contact that I was using in the Attorney General's office is no longer there, so I'm waiting on a new contact there, but.
I'm glad you brought that up, this new one that Todd Young has proposed. I don't think I've got that in there, do I? He has a bill that he has proposed with help to change the electoral commission, the electors that elect the president, which you vote in your state. What happens, most of the states except for Nebraska and Maine, it's a winner take all. Indiana, whoever gets the most popular vote, the electors from Indiana are obligated to vote for that person when they send their electoral count, when they count the electoral votes to Washington DC for the vice president to count. There's some debate on what his policies are and aren't. We do not need the electoral count. That's a state responsibility, number one. I can agree to part of it where it says they pick one person to be responsible for reporting the count from the state. But changing the electoral count is not going to change the fraud stuff that has been going on in the elections. And I just followed one of the primaries in one of the states, and they found, I think it was 5 to 7 different falsifications with the machines. So it happened. We don't need to change the electoral college. That's a state responsibility, and they ought to keep it. And they ought to tell Mr. Young to retire. That's my deal. Sorry, I don't want to give him a political speech, but that's the way I feel about it right now.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have fiber discussion for Jefferson County 4-H Fairgrounds.
Can I back you up a moment? I'm sorry, I just had a question. Are you spearheading the new ordinance or resolution that we were talking about?
I don't know, I think it's kind of a joint.
You said you made a contact with someone at the state that's no longer there?
Attorney General's office.
So maybe we can get a hold of our representatives for our area, including Jim Lucas, who's tied with Guy Wilford and others that have helped other counties to get sanctuary status, no matter what we call it.
We agree with it.
So can we get some type of a commitment that we're going to move this forward to at least try to get something else back out for the community to look at to see if we can bridge that?
I think that's what we said at the meeting. We were going to get something together to get it back out. It just.
So we're 3 weeks later. We don't want to have to do this every month. So we're asking if you talk to someone that's no longer there, what's the
Well,
game
obviously,
plan?
we couldn't talk to someone who was no longer there,
So what's the game
But-
plan?
Well, we're trying to get another contact, just like
I'm giving
Mr.
you a
Lee said.
contact here, and I'm asking which one of the three of you should we contact to be the contact person for this?
I can do that, I'm the president, so I can do that. Get me a
So we want more than just a nice feel that we're working on it. It takes a little bit more commitment because a lot of people took off their days to come here today to support this. And now we've hashed out and put all our dirty laundry of everything that's wrong all the way down to here. We need to work together here to make sure that you guys are protecting us in our county here. And you guys have to feel comfortable with that. I don't know if we're getting that same commitment back from you other than that you'll look into it. So whatever we can do, or I can be your point person to make those contacts with Mr. Lucas if you don't have that. And aren't we a split county? There's another representative, a state representative?
Randy Fry.
Okay, so I don't know Randy Fry, so does someone else know him that they
I'll
can?
contact Randy.
Okay.
So, is this the time to throw out
That some of us don't want you to do this ordinance. I mean, that's
I think
where
there
we
are plenty
are.
of people in the city and county that don't want this. I'm curious how the police feel about going into homes, domestic or whatever concerns in the homes, or for a drug bust, anything, but mostly just going into a home and the people there are armed. Isn't that more difficult for the police? I mean, as a sheriff, do you think that it's,
Police should never enter your place without a warrant.
well, excuse me, but
What did you say, ma'am?
so, isn't it more difficult to respond to a call knowing that more and more people are armed when you respond to the call?
Sure it would be, but
Drug addicts aren't typically carrying
you go into a situation, a domestic situation, you're gonna have anything and everything in there.
Right.
And they can have knives, clubs, you know, I
Right.
mean, I've been involved in it, you know.
Sure.
I've been involved for
Right.
20 years, and you gotta always put that in your mind.
Right.
You're going to a house that is full of weapons,
Right.
you know.
And more people, more and more homes do have weapons.
Correct.
And so, I would think that would be more of a concern for law officers.
Why would they be going into a lawful person's home?
Oh, domestic abuse.
Well, anything, really,
That's
any
very
concern.
often when police get killed, when they answer a domestic abuse call.
Typically,
That's
those
a lot of
children are
social
criminals that aren't
workers
legally
around
allowed
this
to
house.
own a
Or missing
weapon.
out, social workers not.
Has anybody said what the definition of this ordinance is?
That's what I wanted to clarify.
Good, go ahead. We're talking about it.
This ordinance started out, and I'll tell you what the ordinance was and is. All this ordinance is saying is, I do not want this county's taxes, my money that I pay, the taxes to this county, to enforce federal or state law. That's all we wanted in that ordinance. It's not our job to do the federal or the state law enforcement's job with our dollars. And that's what this ordinance is all about. And several counties in Indiana have already passed these type ordinances. Because the feds want to come in and say, hey, police chief, we got a report. And by the way, remember, this report is probably 99.7% wrong. That's false. He wants to send your police chief out to a house to investigate if a considered criminal at this. This is one time you're not innocent. This is when you're guilty until proven innocent, which is against the Constitution. But we should not be using our forces, or our police officers should not be in the line of fire to do some stupid federal law enforcement. And 99% of your federal laws are stupid.
This thing isn't about gun control, it's about deciding that you are not going to enforce a federal law. Well, if
Right.
we're going to start doing that, I would like to say, let's get a sanctuary city here for women's reproductive rights. And I can get 2,700 signatures, and will you put together an ordinance that says, if they come out and say something else, I don't
I
want you to
said
enforce it.
preservation, by the way.
Okay, we can say
Wait a minute,
preservation,
wait
but
a
I'm
minute.
preserving women's
Okay.
rights, or I want to preserve something else. It's like, we don't get to say which laws we want to defend and which ones we don't. I don't think. At least that isn't how I thought government came.
I would like to respond. Abortion is not in the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution will you find anything about abortion. We're talking about the law of the land.
But it's laws. What are we, are we protecting some laws but not others?
No.
That's the issue.
The only laws that we should be protecting are the ones that are constitutional, and the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Indiana. Any other law, they should be ignored as far as I'm concerned. And we got a lot of them.
But do we get to just say what laws are fair and what aren't? I mean, if you're talking Constitution, that is, we have a whole level of police and jail and courts, and then, the Supreme Court is what decides what's constitutional and what isn't.
When it gets there, yes.
Is it up to us? I mean, we really can't say, we don't like this law, so we're not going to do it. We, as a city, are saying we're not going to do it.
No, I'm just saying that I don't want my taxpayers funding somebody else's job. That's all that ordinance says.
Are the same people not out fighting
But doesn't
for the
the Supreme Court
so-called
just say
women's
that we
rights?
have the right
And
to,
they're
for
having
our
rights.
Yes, and by the way,
Protests.
look at the bright
because
side
you
for
don't
you
like
gun
the fact
owners.
that it's illegal.
I think that
Same
the
thing.
Bruin case is
Same
gonna
thing.
get it's probably gonna shut down the ATF, thankfully. It's coming, hopefully.
We kind of had an agenda.
Right.
I'm sorry.
We were going with,
I wonder if Mr. Carter has ever considered running for office to see how well you do with this point of view.
Well,
Did
you
you
know,
ever- I
a
mean,
few
you
years
seem to
ago I
really
did one,
enjoy-
but I had to leave town before because of my mother's illness, or I would have been one.
Well, I'm
Be a
just
good
wondering
one,
how
too.
well you would have gone over
Yeah,
in
but-
the electoral
so this
process.
discussion is healthy for us.
Right.
And then we got an agenda.
We got an agenda, right? Sorry about that.
You're okay. You're all right, sir.
It sounds like you need another meeting for 2A only.
Yes, we'll do yeah.
Well, let us get something together that we
I
can
don't
put out
think
that
we can do
everybody can
that.
look at. We're not just gonna give it to one group, we're not the other, so we can sit down and talk through it.
That's the way to solve it.
And that's the plan. We're not here to,
So are we gonna set an appointment to do that?
well, we need to get something together, or there's no sense putting
So
an
who's we
appointment.
again? I'm sorry, I know you're
The
doing it.
three of us is we. Okay,
And
that's,
you'll
that's,
communicate to, because there's a Facebook community here
Sure.
that's the reason we have a lot of people here. So,
Be advertised a little bit more, because there's a lot of guys that didn't even know about it until this morning.
Oh,
It was released on the 15th, and what, today's the 18th, right?
3-day notice.
I don't think this road would be big enough if.
well, it was not intended for that. Once again, it was for Mr. Carter to discuss the Second Amendment Preservation Act request, and that's what it was. It was not to get into the community discussion like we
it was to
had.
follow up on our last community.
So,
area
did you ask to be on the agenda to do that?
No, I showed
you
up
didn't.
here to listen to
Okay,
Mr.
so,
Carter. Why are you so defensive, Mr.
Hostile,
Reimer?
very hostile.
That's the way it was last time.
No, that's you. They're describing this, you know.
You're not supposed to ask your representatives questions.
no, I didn't say that. Did I say
Very-
that?
no,
I
you're
said,
hostile, you're angry, and you're rude.
so,
And you have no
That's the way to
inten-
represent the county.
you have
Good
no
job.
intention of
Anything.
passing this. You've already
Passing-
voiced that. You've already voiced that in a public area.
What's the,
passing
So
what?
the agenda is.
What's
The
the point
Second
of
Amendment
a...
sanctuary. That's
The-
why
the
we
or-
have to,
the
we have to
ordin-
work
the
together.
ordinance that you sent us?
The ordinance,
That you-
or what we've been working through. I think Mr. Carter also gave you one, didn't he?
What?
Did he give you his version that he wanted to have done earlier?
All I want is us not spending.
That's not what she asked you. Yes, he did. Yes, he gave you the one that had been drafted by
He gave us
Missouri.
several
Yeah.
states,
Yes.
Missouri, and
Oh, okay.
Several that work for
My
it.
fault.
And then there was another one that had several thousand citizens that signed it, and that wasn't really addressed. You guys just kind of took your version. So we've got 3 versions sitting out there. So it's gonna take some type of a committee or a meeting of the minds if we're gonna go anywhere.
I agree.
By the way, I like his version. I think
Who's-
the one that gave you the other one.
Figured that out.
You, just for a second, you said something last meeting when we were in, that the attorneys didn't like this? Are these local attorneys or?
Sure, I was our county attorney,
County,
and
okay.
things on the last proposed ordinance
Yeah.
were,
But I don't remember you saying what was wrong with it, or why they didn't approve it, or.
Their
Yeah.
lawyer, he said their lawyer said.
This is costing no money to the county, number one, right there. Number two, it's already in the Constitution. We should not even be asking this question at this point in time. Ask yourself, what has happened to bring all this to a head? It's the government that's in there right now that's trying to push for gun confiscation. They want to go against the Second Amendment in the Constitution for our right to keep and bear arms. And I've seen some really dumb comments, not here, but I've seen them online right there. Not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, there was a representative, a Democrat representative, that made this statement right there that no 19-year-old should ever be allowed to carry a gun. All right? I was 19 when I went to Vietnam. Nobody argued with that then.
I was 18 when I went to Korea.
I believe you. We were capable then, and why should we even have to fight for this right now? I don't understand. The only thing we're asking is we don't want the federal government, we don't want our law enforcement to enforce what the federal government wants to do. If the federal wants to come in, I say let them take their chances when it comes down to it. But we don't want a local police right there to get involved in it, basically. That's what I understand it's supposed to be. I may be wrong, but that's all I understand, and I don't understand what the legal term is right there when you have the Constitution to back you up. What's the legal fight against it? I'm not a lawyer, but I don't understand what the legal is against it.
War versus town as far as military. I mean, you know.
Pardon me?
I mean, it's kind of like Vietnam versus hometown.
Well, we're not asking anything to carry guns. We already have guns. The people that have them, I've had them all my life, since I was 5 years old. I've never shot anybody. And the other complaint that I have, I'm taking up time, but the other complaint I have is this AR, assault rifle. No, it's not. AR stands for Armalite rifle. These rifles have been around since 1962, I believe. It was an AR-16 then, not a 15, which was a fully automatic or a semi-automatic. I seen one of the first ones. I didn't know what it was. I was never trained on them, but I got one. And the fact is, these guns have been around this long. How come in the last 12 years, 10 years, all these shootings have come about? Blaming the rifle. The rifle's been here since the 60s. It didn't shoot anybody then. 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, what changed? People changed in the way that kids were brought up. That's what's changed.
Well, that's true. I agree with that.
The same rifle, so you can't blame it on a
More
gun.
people have guns than in the 60s. More homes, more people, more individuals own.
The people that by and large, people that have problems that have guns are criminals to begin with. If you take away the guns from the honest citizens, try to confiscate them, the criminals are still going to have guns. You're at worst shape right there if you don't have a way to defend yourself. Every city will show you that. Look at New York right now. New York is terrible. Philadelphia is terrible on the crime that they have right now. Blaming it on the weapons right there. They're stolen weapons from criminals.
Well, I appreciate that people can have a discussion. It would be great
Sure.
at some point to have
I agree.
an open discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
You know that police have no responsibility to protect you.
Well,
Yeah, we heard that last time.
Sir?
No?
Sir, I agree with everything you said. And I don't like where things are going now with our goats. But it does no good for us to sit here and pass some fuzzy, good-feeling ordinance that does nothing. If we can do something that we can put teeth in it, I don't have a big problem with it.
That's fine. You know, I think that's all.
just my feeling on it.
You know,
can't
I
speak
come to
for
these meetings, I
too.
think that's all anybody's asking right there. Let's do something.
But
You know, if you all want to have
your
something.
ducks in a row so it means something.
Well, I totally agree. We started this 2 years ago, though.
Than just this. You're elected to
Are you,
represent.
we're not the federal government right here, so we've been in it for 2 years and we're going nowhere.
Sheriff's your law authority, not the county council and the county.
I'm just saying it doesn't really affect everybody. It should be no different from what it was 5 years ago in this county. There's no change. There should be no change for it if you put this in effect. What's going to change? You're not going to tax us anymore, I don't think.
For somebody doing the Fed's job.
It's a federal government. It's not the state. It's not the county. I don't think we have anything against any of you all in the county. It's not what we're saying. It's the federal government. You're all wiser than me, probably. You see this right there and what's happening in the federal government and the control they want to take away from you and I. Look at what he was saying. The gentleman's right there. It's in all the news right there. Biden has stood up and said, we got to pass this bill. Nobody's going to pay any more taxes unless you make $400,000 and above. Well, that lasted like 2 days. Now it's all the way down to 0 to 25,000.
Oh, no.
A certain percentage is going to be audited. That's what I'm saying. We are against this federal government. I am. I'll stand up and guarantee you. I am. I fought for the country right there. I didn't fight for this. I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, discussion we have to have, so, and I appreciate it. And we are working on it, whatever you think, but anyway, we will get something out and let everybody know where you're going. Sarah's real good at putting stuff out on our Facebook page, so we'll have another get together where we can get, when we have our proposed ordinance, and you all can look at it, and we can read it together.
And we'd like to have a copy of what the lawyer says.
Yeah.
Did you have a lawyer present?
No.
We can ask him. If he's available, I mean, I think he would be more than happy. So, I understand that.
That might appease some people.
Well, I understand the thought there, but I don't.
Okay, so we need to move on to the next part of the agenda is the fire discussions with Jefferson.
Excuse us, we have to be careful. So we don't have any.
Thank you for your time.
Drive safe.
We don't have any problems with anything on your list after this.
Be careful, sir.
See you later.
Fire discussion.
A little later, right there.
Nope, there.
I know I'd like to
Hello,
point with
I've given my spiel, so unless you want me to give it again.
Okay. I've been in contact with Tim McDonough, he's IT at the Fair Board, and he's on the Fair Board.
Thank you much for your time, people.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Bye, guys.
I call it.
And also Metronet. And they have got together, and for the fiber, the poles, the routers, the installation to the office and grandstand, for a total of $7,500, one-time shop.
I'm sorry, I can't.
She couldn't hear you.
I can't hear you.
For the fiber, the poles, the routers, the installation, and that's to the office and the grandstand, was a total of $7,500. So I think this would be a good benefit for the fairgrounds, not only your project or show can go ahead and go on, but it may be an asset. Somebody else may want to come in here and do a truck pull or something big, and hey, we've got 100 gig here or 5 gig, we can do what you want. And that was to be set at $250 a month. So there's no ramp up, ramp down, it's just 1 gig all the way across. So when they need it, it's there. And like I said, that would cover her events, it could broadcast the livestock, the judging, the auction, Wi-Fi stations, locks we could put up. It'd be a boon to the fairgrounds from now and on. So we do have broadband money available, right? So I would propose that we help the fairgrounds get this installed in time for her event and then for later. And I would like to see us give them a year of the $250 a month because to help offset their budget a little bit. That's my spiel.
Okay.
So, excuse me, the newspaper said that it was 25,000, I believe, or no, it
This
was
was
about 75,000
Different.
from the ARP funds.
No one said
American Rescue
75,000.
Yeah.
The 75,000 was never
It
stated.
was 74,000 plus.
No.
It was in the newspaper.
I don't know where that came from.
It's not correct.
Okay, Bob, fess up.
She said you was asking for 50,000 last time, I think, is what you
It
said,
was
right?
requested.
50,000
You're
plus
requesting.
20,000 from.
But Spectrum was gonna provide
Spectrum was
25.
covering the
Right,
But this is
construction.
not
Wasn't
Spectrum, this
25.
is
Right.
Metronet.
Yeah.
It's a different.
And then you're saying 250 will be a Spectrum payment after that each month that the county would pay?
For the,
Where's that money
no, the
come
first
from?
year.
For just
That would
the
be
first
the
year.
American Rescue Plan.
Just
Because
to
enough
get-
people would profit, or,
Well,
maybe
how
that's not a
many
good word.
people, because we have kids that don't have internet out in their homes around the county. I mean, I'm
Especially
for,
Hanover area.
and, you know,
Sure,
if
but I
the
mean, they,
fairgrounds is where we need it, fine, but it's like, I thought some of the money was gonna be, we need better broadband
Sure.
coverage
And
all
we're-
over this county, especially in the rural areas, so,
and
and
we're,
when I heard the figure 50,000, and I have no problem with the event and all that, that's great for this county, but the county's not into tourism, it should be into helping people who need internet
sure,
access, you know?
and we have people working on that in a broader sense.
But 50,000 that's been
Well-
asked for this project.
Sure,
Do a
well,
lot of work for the rest of the county as well.
What-
sure,
yeah, that's
but what
right.
we found out is it's $7,500
$7,500.
Less than that.
$250 a month, and we
Okay.
want to help the fairgrounds to do that for a year. I think
Yeah.
that's the proposal.
So,
Makes sense.
So-
sorry, just to be clear. So rather than the 50,000?
Correct.
It would be 250 a month for 1 year?
Well, there's going to be 7,500 to get it set up to do.
That's the installation and
Okay.
all the equipment, and everything. And then it's $250 per month for 1 gig of service, which will handle anything they're gonna throw at it.
Okay.
And we just wanted to help them for that 1 year. After that, it will be up to the Jefferson County 4-H, no, Jefferson County, yeah,
4-H.
4-H Agricultural Association. They'll have to curtail that.
How do they earn money?
Donations. we
So
don't know.
donations would have to pay for the year after that?
The other thing that, if you weren't at the other meeting, was that the fairgrounds is technically a space where if there was another situation like COVID, that enough people could sit in their cars and have high enough internet speed to conduct their business. So
That's
it's an
all over town,
emergency
right?
location.
Yeah.
And the wires for that broadband stopped like a half mile away. They didn't complete it.
It is interesting though, as far as children with all of the, with school being, with COVID, and I hear that they've had to close. Supposedly, a couple of junior high classes had to, all the children couldn't show up again because of COVID. Anyway, so where do those kids go? I mean, I'm a big sister from Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I know that some of the kids don't have internet in their homes to do the homework, let alone, I know a number of families who, from tutoring too, who don't have internet. So would they have to go sit outside the fairgrounds, or could that money be spent trying to
I mean,
help our homes?
every coffee shop has free internet, and you can show up to the meeting and request internet in certain specific areas.
Yeah. So I mean,
Which is
so
what I
we
did for the
really need it
fairgrounds.
for the fairgrounds.
Yeah. You have the opportunity to show up and request money to support different areas of the county if that's what you're needing. So mine is specifically to help the fairgrounds and to help the 4-H kids.
There is a group now
There's a group.
working with broadband, and I believe Chelsea in that area, I believe that's SCI Data got a grant, so that's on the works to get the broadband
Homes,
down there.
into homes,
Mhm.
is that what you're saying?
Because it's
Well,
a
that's
dead
good to
zone,
hear.
dead spot, and they're gonna come out of Hanover.
Well,
with it.
That's the thing, there are a lot of those, that grants that were for southeastern Indiana, which is really good, and I think they're working at it. It's just that, my concern when I saw $50,000 is like, well, you could spend that somewhere else, is where I was just making an issue.
But you can also show up and request it somewhere else too.
I mean, it just takes time. I mean,
So
we're
it's
working to
kind
get that, but it's,
But
I
it's.
mean, the providers
Mhm.
have decided that it just wasn't financially worth them to do that. I mean, I can't force them to do it. Now they're getting funds
But
to do that.
that's why the grants were,
Right,
that's
right.
why the whole,
Mhm.
the American things, all the things that not one of our state representatives have ever voted for. But I mean, at least there's some
That was
money coming
fine.
into the county.
Well, it's
But-
like Ripley County RMC and SCI Data, it's been what, maybe a couple of years now? They're working together on their poles, and they're putting fiber, and they're taking broadband to the homes.
So
That's-
the north, kind of
that
the
would be
northeast
huge.
part of the
It's the
county.
people out in the country, isn't it? And I mean, and somebody.
Some of them have nothing, yes,
Right.
other unless they go Usenet or something like
Right.
that, and it's so
And,
expensive.
if the parents are working, the kids are home with nothing, no internet access, which became so clear during COVID,
Right.
that everything was supposed to be, the kids, all their education for the year was supposed to be. Which, I thought, well, this is one place rather than trying to be sure we're addressing the homes of people who don't have
We're working on it. I mean, it's just not
it.
something.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear. And that's ARP money, that's American Rescue Plan.
Well,
So
we-
it's not considered like entertainment. It's for, how would this be?
It's also supporting your children at the 4-H level. This internet is not just for the rodeo. Those kids have an auction every year to support the youth of the county.
Yeah.
And if you were to put that on the internet, imagine the amount of money that you could raise for that.
Yeah, that's been going on for a long time, and without internet.
The 4-H Fairgrounds is a very worthy cause.
And there can be wireless access points put on the grounds where they could pull, like the extension office, say they have to do home learning or whatever. They may have to drive to that spot, but at least they would have access.
Well, thank you.
There's a lot of possibilities,
Yeah.
but we got to get it there first.
Thanks, I appreciate the discussion, thank you.
Answer your question.
Okay. So, what was the final answer? 70?
7,500 plus 250 a month, I think was that your proposal?
That would be my proposal,
Okay.
at least the 75 anyway, to get it installed, so it run with it.
I think
And that will work, you'll work with Tim with that, and then we'll have that ready for
25th and 6th or whenever.
23rd and 24th.
Oh, we missed the
Just before the 23rd is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we
Yes.
have 42 million potentially live viewers for that event. That's what the Cowboy Channel has. Live TV.
So, sure, you put that in motion in a second.
Is there any chance that rodeo will continue to be the Chautauqua weekend?
It actually will not be because it was agreed
Thank you.
upon at the board that it wouldn't be.
Okay, thank you.
But I think because of schedule conflicts, it fell there and it couldn't go. Couldn't go
Yes, it
anywhere
is the
else.
last rodeo before the professional finals rodeo in, national finals rodeo in Las Vegas. And so it's the last step for Cowboys to win what they need to win to hopefully be world champions. So you're gonna have a really big event at the Jefferson County Fairgrounds this year. And then it'll just keep growing and we'll grow it into a week-long celebration. And it also benefits the Saddle Tree Factory because that is your link to Western Heritage.
I'm sure I've
So your
seen
proceeds go to that as well.
local people who normally have vendor spots there, food spots there are gonna be there to help.
Yep, the donut,
Right.
the Holy Donuts is opening. We're very lucky to have them. And the Rikers Ridge is opening, volunteer, and we're not asking them to pay anything. Just
So I
open.
wonder if some of the rodeo proceeds could go for savings or some funding for continuing the $250 a month after 1 year.
Well, this year the proceeds are going to the Saddle Tree Factory.
But I mean, the county doesn't really have a lot of money. I know that because of other things that we've asked for. I'm just thinking, and I can't imagine the 4-H having a lot of money to just do fundraisers to pay $250 a month. But, I mean, it just seems like if that's what's bringing in the money, maybe they could.
We
Yeah,
have a lot-
somebody's making a profit
We have a lot of
somewhere.
things in the works, so you can contact me if you have concerns or
Well, as far
ideas.
as voting on it, maybe it would be a good idea to consider in the future to have the proceeds from the rodeo help to offset the cost of the monthly costs. After a year.
Okay, I propose that we give the Jefferson County Agricultural Association the $7,500 for the fiber poles, routers, installation to the office and grandstand, plus the $250 a month for a year, get them going to handle the rodeo and anything else that comes along and for next year, out of the ARP broadband money that we set aside for just such instances.
I second that.
Okay.
And Heather, this has been advertised, so we're good to roll, right?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, any other discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate
Thank you. Appreciate your
it.
work.
Yeah, thank you.
So next we have what the heck for Oh, WTA.
Okay, so I'll take that one. That is me. And I've lost it in the midst of all this. So, this is a data sharing contract from WTH, which is our mapping company. And we get these, I mean, I've presented these to you guys multiple times. So these are, it's the same verbiage that WTH puts together. And what it is a company, which is Core Logic, has requested our map data from our GIS map. And they will actually send us a check for $250 to retrieve that data. So, it's, like I said, it's the same contract that we put together every time. It's just a different company.
So they're asking.
Oh, sorry.
So the,
I believe CoreLogic is a company that services mortgage.
I think it is, yeah.
So they
Like
do
the
a lot of
escrow.
your escrow payments for your mortgage escrows for take contact. Unless they lie, I'm assuming. They would like to have access.
It's just renewing, right?
well, this is a different company. And I mean, we've done it for some other companies that wanted access to the data. No, did they pay us? They paid us enough. You can't
Right,
pay them.
some,
I mean, it's just kind of the,
some pay, some do not.
all the X's, right?
Yeah.
No, individual X is what they want, so. We accept their proposal from CoreLogic for receiving GIS data from WTH. And they will provide 200, I think it's 750 there, is it 250?
Well, it's our agency's
Okay, so they
that's
will,
the initial.
okay,
payment
that
or
may be what
something.
they're, yeah, so they'll send a check to the county for $250 for use of this data. So, that makes sense.
All right. Got a motion here, any more questions or comments? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Yes, ma'am.
I can get it from you when you
Okay. And now we have a little time for some public comment. I know Kathy came to speak about CAC just a little bit, so we've already discussed it a little bit. Me and Bobby was talking about it a while ago. We learned.
I wanted to make sure that, that you all understood that the CAC is the Children's Advocacy Center and that CASA is court-appointed advocates. They're two totally separate things, two totally separate fundings. And the CAC, basically, what they do is if there's a case against a child, a juvenile, they do forensic interviews that can be presented in court, and that way the perpetrator or the person that's been charged, that child does not have to appear in court to testify. You know, imagine being a small child and having to go in the courtroom and face the person that did horrible things to you. And I had a minute video, if you don't mind, that I saw that came out a couple days ago. And it's the state police superintendent. Have you seen that?
That's the one you sent me, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
That's the superintendent of the state police.
I'm Doug Carter, the superintendent of the Indiana State Police. It's a pleasure to be in the Advocacy Center here in southeastern Indiana. You know, when I came in this morning, I saw this book on the desk. It's called Safe in a Storm. And I can't think of a more appropriate reference to what this work is. I think it's also important to recognize those that do this work and the struggles that they must face individually, because I can't understand that part. But what I can do is always get support of this work, and I constantly will, and always will, until my final days. One of the things that concerns me when I think about the things that happen over the course of a day in Indiana, when I get up reading in the morning about what occurred in the last 24 hours, it would rock the conscience of a good soul, because evil lives amongst us. Evil is here. Evil targets young children. And I wish there was a way for us to take that away. I wish there was a way for me not to have to say that to you. I wish there was a reason for you not to have to be here tonight. But evil lives amongst us, and it's so very, very important. A laser focus on evil through collaboration, through partnerships. Now's our time. If we pool our resources and imagine the possibilities.
And that's, you know, I'm here fighting for the people that can't fight for themselves. And the ARP money, from my understanding, because there are a lot of more perpetrators, because people have been stuck at home, and there have been a lot more offenses, and out of a 24-county area, Jefferson County is #1 in a bad way with offenders. And we put the least amount of money towards the CAC. And, you know, I'm just here as an individual, having known somebody that had to use their services, and knowing how much it helped their child, I would like to see that available for my grandchildren or their children in the future, and I would like to see us support that. I'm not asking.
Our office here is in danger of closing.
Yes, the Madison office is in danger of closing. They run out of funding in September. And so, you know, I heard about that, and, you know, obviously I care about it, or I wouldn't have sat through 2 hours of the other stuff, along with my granddaughter to, you know, she said, Nana, can I come visit? I'm like, sure, I'm gonna go to the meeting, it won't take long, and we got fooled. So, anyway, it's worth it to me to sit here to talk to you about this and hope that you think it's a worthy cause to put some funding towards.
Thank you, Kathy. Yep, we've been, yeah. That's what me and Bobby, I was just telling Bobby I didn't realize CASA, I was talking to you the other day.
Yes.
I didn't realize CASA and CAC were separate.
Yes.
I also know a young man in law enforcement who really likes this.
If you check into the work they do, it is unbelievable, and the horrific things that the people that work there have to go through day after day to hear it, and go home and try and sleep after you've heard these things, and they have to keep it to themselves because otherwise, you know, the perpetrator could go free. And so, I mean, they're a terrific resource for the state police, for locally, if there's a situation that you go through that you need help with your child, and they don't have to appear in court most often.
And Randy Fry is also now.
Randy Fry represents the Madison area. Yes, instead of just the county, the city proper.
District.
Yes.
Excuse me, does CAC work with CASA? Are you all, I mean, are they?
No, they're totally separate functions. I don't work with any of them.
Right.
I mean, I just know that they're getting ready, that the office, if there's not some funding, will be shut down.
Where is the office at?
It's in, what's the name of the?
Clearinghouse.
The clearinghouse.
Oh, downtown.
Downtown, the
Go see
clearinghouse.
our.
They received a grant several years ago from the Community Foundation to
See in our building.
we could soundproof the walls and everything so that they complied, so that it would be admissible.
Prior to that, the closest one was what, Aurora, I think?
Versailles or Aurora?
Yeah, up
Yes.
that way.
Well, I'm with the Moose, and October 15th, we're putting on a car show. And we're gonna have a raffle and stuff that day, 50-50 drawings. And they had asked me to pick a charity in Jefferson County who I wanted the money, the proceeds, all the proceeds will go to CASA.
CASA is totally separate.
Yes, well, I didn't know nothing about this.
Yeah.
September the 10th at the Moose, I don't know what time, we're gonna have another meeting. If you wanna come up, we might be, I mean, I don't know how much money we're gonna pay. They're looking at maybe 100 cars, $1,500, you know, anything that, you know, to help out, you know. Yeah, I didn't know, I never even heard of that.
Right, a lot of people don't, and they're low key for a very good reason, you know, because they have to keep children safe. Some of these children are removed from the home in the middle of the night. They have to take them to a safe place. The state trooper stays there overnight, and then the staff does the interviewing, and everything's done very quietly.
Yeah, we have, I mean, I'm with the youth shelter also, and, you know, I think we got 2 places in the county for a safe place. I think it is 2 of them. We had 3, but 1 of them closed down. Switzerland County don't have none now.
No, closed. Yeah.
Closed them,
Yeah.
so. You know.
So is this something that you all would vote on? A motion, or?
I definitely want to help out. I just, we probably need to sit down and put some, see what's left over here. And
I mean, there is funding in the American Rescue Plan for nonprofits. So there's 200,000, I think, that we were gonna give to different nonprofits. So, I mean, we have some funds there that we haven't broken it up yet, so.
Well, you know, I just, you know, giving the rent they have to pay and the overhead, you know, I would really like to see at least $100,000 go to them. I know that's a lot of money, but in the scheme of things and helping the children, since our county doesn't have a good history of supporting it, I would like to see that changed if possible.
We got a number for our target.
Well, that was my minimum.
Oh, man.
That was my minimum, I'm hoping for 200.
Kathy, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment before we wrap up?
I'll put a plug in for this park board. Richard Hill, park board, sent me the deer application yesterday, and I put that on Facebook and on the county website for the annual, they do like a deer draw for the Western Wood parcel, so that's out there.
Yeah, I hope that works out, to be honest.
I'm about to run out of my cards, so I need to turn this off and restart it.
Do you want us just to end it, and that'll be all right?
If you're done.
Motion to adjourn. You don't have anything? One thing I have is the fence is supposed to be started on next Wednesday at the animal shelter.
Good, I don't have anything. Well, the September, next meeting over here, treatment train, September 15th, will be here in this room.